Okay? What do you say, Bill? Come on.
Hello folks, and welcome back to Marvelous Videos. One of our absolute favorite genres of movies here at Marvelous is the creature feature. What could be better than a movie dedicated to a huge and iconic monster? Well, slap in a dash of comedy and you'll have the perfect movie for a Saturday night in. Today, we have an entire list of 18 comedy creature features for you to add to your binge list, so let's get right into it. Before we get too deep though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means everything. Thank you. Let's begin. Gremlins. Randall Peltzer is out doing some last-minute Christmas shopping in an antique shop in Chinatown when he comes across a mysterious and furry creature called the Mogwai. Mr. Wing, the owner of the shop, refuses to sell this creature, but his grandson goes behind his back and sells it to Randall, giving him some rules to remember. The sunlight will kill the Mogwai, never let it touch water, and most importantly of all, don't let it eat after midnight. Randall names the creature Gizmo and gifts it to his son Billy. Billy bonds with Gizmo and follows all the rules his father laid out, but his friend, Pete Fontaine, accidentally spills water on him and 5 Mogwais sprout out. These Mogwai are mischievous, unlike the docile and friendly Gizmo, and are led by the most aggressive of them all, named Stripe. They show these creatures to their science teacher, Roy Hansen, who takes one home to conduct experiments. The Mogwais trick Billy into feeding them after midnight and molt into reptilian creatures called Gremlins. Stripe multiplies by jumping into a local pool, and the Gremlins begin terrorizing the entire town. Gizmo and Billy, along with the help of his colleague Kate, explode a theater where most of the Gremlins are watching a movie. As the sun dawns, Stripe tries to multiply by jumping into a fountain, but Gizmo opens a window, letting in sunlight that kills Stripe. The next day, Mr. Wing comes back to retrieve Gizmo, but seeing his bond with Billy allows Gizmo to stay with him. Drawing on British folklore and legends about mischievous creatures, Gremlins was written by Chris Columbus. In the early stages of the script, there was just one Mogwai, but the executive producer Steven Spielberg suggested that there needs to be a good one and a bad one, which led to the creation of Stripe. So, in conclusion, Joe Dante's 1984 movie Gremlins might just be the perfect first horror movie for preteens and teens. It's funny and just a little bit scary, making it an ideal family watch. Tremors. Ron Underwood's 1990 movie Tremors was so successful that it spawned an entire franchise. Written by Underwood, Brent Maddock, and S.S. Wilson, Tremors follows 2 handymen, Val McKee and Earl Bassett, in Perfection, Nevada. They're bored of their mundane lives in their small town, but on their way to the next town, they discover some dead bodies. Assuming a serial killer is on the prowl, they return to their town to warn the others. Their warning is ignored by 2 construction workers who are soon killed by a mysterious underground snake-like creature. Val and Eddie ride horses to the next town, Bixby, to get help. During their ride, they're attacked by the creature, which reveals itself to be a gigantic blind worm with long tongues that look like tentacles. The worm chases them till it hits an aqueduct and dies from the impact. This scene is witnessed by Rhonda Lebec, a student studying seismology whose research suggests that there are a total of 4 worms in the area. They also find out that the worms hunt by detecting seismic vibrations. Val, Earl, and Rhonda ride back to town where they find all the residents hiding on rooftops. Daredevil couple Bert and Heather Gummer manage to kill one of the worms with their homemade weapons and explosives. When Earl finds out about Bert's pipe bombs, he plans to trick the worm into swallowing them. This plan works for one of the worms, but the last remaining worm spits out the bomb and destroys the remaining explosives. Val lures it to follow him across the cliff, after which it falls off the cliff to its death. Now free of the monsters, the residents return and contact the authorities, while Val thinks about confessing his love to Rhonda. So if you like Jaws but you get seasick, Tremors is an excellent choice. Bad Milo. Duncan has a lot of stress. He's in charge of firing people, his wife Sarah makes him see an eccentric doctor, his mom's dating someone really young, and to top it all off, Duncan has an unusually large polyp in his intestines. To make things worse, the polyp takes on the form of a 2-foot creature and begins killing whatever it thinks is the source of Duncan's stress. His therapist recommends bonding with the creature to stop its violent behaviors, so Duncan names the creature Milo. Milo goes on to attack his father and his father's anal-dwelling creature. After Milo kills his boss, Duncan moves with him to a hotel to prevent other murders. Milo then attacks Sarah. Duncan manages to stop Milo and severs his arm and leg, but during their fight, Duncan understands the importance of Milo and they finally bond with each other. Sarah inserts Milo back into Duncan's anus. During the ending, it's revealed that Duncan's son will also have a creature like Milo, as the audience is shown the embryo of the new creature in the unborn fetus. Bad Milo first hit the scene at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and it's the brainchild of Jacob Vaughn and Benjamin Hayes. This 2013 flick is a love letter to those wild, cheesy 80s effects, funny and a little creepy, but nothing that'll keep you up at night. The Brain. The 1988 Canadian sci-fi movie The Brain is about the titular alien creature. Dr. Blake, the mad scientist harnessing the brainwashing powers of the brain, makes a TV program called Independent Thinking, through which he controls the minds of his audience. Jim Majalewski, a troubled young man, is sent to Dr. Blake after he's caught flushing sodium down his school's toilet as an alternative to suspension. Jim is immune to the brain as he has an extremely active imagination, but he begins to hallucinate about the gigantic brain. His girlfriend Janet and friend Willie help him escape Dr. Blake, but then the brain kills Willie. Jim and Janet try to free others from the mind control of the brain, while Blake's assistant Verna pursues them. Verna uses the brain to trick everyone into believing that Jim is a murderer. Just as Dr. Blake begins live streaming a new episode of his show, Jim barges onto the show and beheads Dr. Blake, showing everyone that he's an alien. The brain, meanwhile, escapes and kills Verna. As it attacks Jim, he throws sodium into its mouth and kills it. Soon, life returns back to normal, and this Canadian movie is so bad that it's good. If you're looking for a light but enjoyable and entertaining watch, choosing The Brain is a no-brainer. Slither. Before James Gunn and his directorial expertise were chosen to relaunch the DC Universe, he had written and directed a sci-fi movie called Slither in 2006. Slither shows an evil alien parasite entering Earth through a meteorite. The parasite takes over the mind of a man called Grant, who transforms into a tentacled monster. Grant abducts a woman called Brenda to breed other parasites. Grant's wife Starla confronts him about his weird behavior and he attacks her. When the police intervene, he escapes. The slithering, worm-like larvae of the parasite burst out of Brenda's body and infect everyone in town except Mayor Jack McCready, Police Chief Bill Party, Starla, and a teenager called Kylie Strudemeyer. The infected people are all connected to a hive mind controlled by Grant, whose sole goal is world domination. Starla and Jack are kidnapped by the hive mind, while Bill and Kylie decide to kill Grant to defeat the hive mind. The part of Grant that loves Starla is still alive, so he keeps her away from his hive mind and Jack, who are being used for breeding. Starla arms herself with a sharp-handled brush and attacks Grant. Help comes in the form of Bill and Kylie, and the three manage to kill Grant, which in turn kills all of the infected townspeople. Bill, Kylie, and Starla remain the only survivors of the town, and they leave to seek help. The movie ends with a cat stumbling across Grant's remains and getting infected by the parasite. Slither is an homage to all the horror movies that have come before it, with inspiration from movies ranging from The Fly to Tremors to The Basket Case and The Blob, to name just a few. This movie is almost a love letter to 80s horror fans. If you're an avid fan of the 80s horror scene, you'll miss out if you don't watch Slither. Let us know in the comments if you managed to list all the movies that James Gunn was inspired by. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Written and directed by the Chiodo brothers, the 1988 sci-fi horror comedy Killer Clowns from Outer Space is about to make your coulrophobia much, much worse. Farmer Gene Green oversees a glowing object land nearby and, assuming it to be a comet, goes to explore. He sees a circus tent, and when he enters it, the clown-like aliens, which are called clowns with a K, capture him. Lovers Debbie and Mike arrive next and discover that the circus tent is actually their spaceship. They also find Green trapped in a cocoon of what looks like cotton candy. A clown arrives and shoots popcorn at them while another one chases them. They escape and report it to the cops, Dave and Curtis, who don't believe them. They later discover that the popcorn the clowns were shooting were their larvae. Dave goes with Mike, who shows him the site of the circus tent, which is now empty, but on their way back, they see many people encased in cotton candy cocoons. Meanwhile, back at the station, Curtis arrests a clown thinking that he's a prankster. When Dave returns to the police station, he sees the clown using the dead body of Curtis as a ventriloquist dummy. Dave shoots the alien in the nose, which turns out to be its soft spot. The alien dies by exploding into confetti. Mike pairs up with his friends Rich and Paul Terenzi to drive around town in an ice cream truck, warning people about the dangers of the killer clowns. Meanwhile, Debbie is dealing with young clowns who have developed from the popcorn that was shot at her earlier. The clowns capture her in a giant balloon and take her to their spaceship. Mike and Dave witness her abduction and follow her to the spaceship, where they see a clown drinking blood from one of their trapped victims. The Terenzi brothers distract the clowns while Mike and Dave save Debbie, but Their humongous leader, Jojo the Clownzilla, attacks them. Just as the spaceship is about to take off, Dave uses his police badge to attack Jojo's nose, which kills the clown and destroys the ship. Everyone escapes the ship safely and watches the amazing fireworks display in the sky as it's destroyed. The movie ends with pies falling on the faces of everybody looking up. Black Sheep. Premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival, Jonathan King's 2006 movie Black Sheep is a dark comedy masterpiece. Set in New Zealand, the movie follows young Henry Oldfield, who lives on a sheep farm with his dad Oliver and his brother Angus. One unfortunate day, Henry finds his pet sheep's bloody corpse and simultaneously learns about his father's death. This traumatizes him so much that he develops a phobia of sheep. 15 years later, Henry returns to New Zealand, unaware that Angus has been running experiments on the sheep. Animal activists Grant and Experience break into the farm to release the sheep, and one of the mutant sheep bites Grant. Henry has a run-in with another mutant sheep which attacks him and his friend Tucker. On the other end of the farm, the infected Grant bites Angus. Angus's assistant, Dr. Astrid Rush, tells Henry of the genetic experiments that have been conducted on the sheep. Their experiments have turned the sheep into vicious carnivores that bite and transform humans. A sheep bites Tucker and his foot transforms into a sheep's hoof. Dr. Rush injects him with an antidote to turn him back into a human, and Angus tries to get a group of businessmen to invest, but they're all slaughtered by sheep. Henry tries to warn Angus about the sheep, but after finding out about his love for sheep, leaves in disgust. When the sheep don't attack him, Henry realizes that he's been infected as well. The antidote is administered to Henry and Angus, but Angus goes back to the sheep to be reinfected, except the sheep attack him and kill him. The movie ends with a bizarre explosion that kills all of the mutant sheep, and the hybrid humans are converted back through antidotes. The Stuff. Larry Cohen's 1985 satire The Stuff is about a weird liquid found by quarry workers. As is expected of the late capitalist society we live in, this white liquid is sold in ice cream tubs and marketed with the title The Stuff. Nobody knows what it's made of, and nobody knows whether it's healthy or not, but it is extremely tasty, and that's all that matters. A young man named Jason finds out that the stuff is actually alive and tries to warn people, but everyone ignores him. Thanks to the popularity of The Stuff, ice cream sales begin to fall drastically, and ice cream business moguls hire a former FBI agent called David Mo Rutherford to find some incriminating evidence relating to the stuff. He finds out that the stuff is actually a parasitic extraterrestrial being that gradually takes over the brains of whoever consumes it and then bursts out of their body, leaving their empty shells behind. Also, their weakness is fire. David pairs up with Jason, and they destroy most of the aliens that have burst out of humans. They broadcast a message on the radio, and people begin boycotting the stuff. David and Jason confront the head of the Stuff Company, Mr. Fletcher, who says without remorse that he plans to remarket it by diluting it with 80% ice cream. That way, the stuff can be consumed without the fear of aliens consuming them back. David forces Fletcher to eat the stuff, and the movie ends with smugglers dealing out the stuff in black markets. The Stuff is a clever movie with an excellent take on global consumerism. If not for the brilliant direction of Larry Cohen, watch this movie for the brilliant acting of Paul Sorvino and Michael Moriarty. Terror Vision. The Putterman family is about to get a nasty surprise from their satellite TV, which accidentally transmits an alien mutant from the planet Pluton. The creature, called Hungry Beast, first gobbles up Grandpa Putterman, which is seen by Sherman. Sherman tries to warn his parents, but like all children in horror movies, he is soundly ignored. Sherman tells his sister Susie and her boyfriend OD next. They initially don't believe him, but after they find imitations of their parents in their room, they're convinced. When the beast tries to chase them, Sherman and Susie tame it with food. They decide to profit off of it and call TV presenter Medusa, who agrees to meet with them. They receive a message from the beast's captor, Pluthar, who warns them to destroy their televisions to prevent the beast's escape. Pluthar, too, transports himself through the TV. As he tries to hunt down the beast, Medusa arrives and kills him, mistakenly assuming that he's the beast. The hungry beast then swallows all of them. The next day, Medusa's chauffeur sees a bad imitation of Medusa in the backseat, demanding to be driven to the TV station. This isn't a highbrow film, but it's a simple and hilarious watch, guaranteed to brighten up your weekend. The Deadly Spawn. Meteorites sure don't bring anything good in these sorts of movies, do they? In this 1983 film, they bring about gigantic alien worms that are blind and hunt with the help of sound. The meteorite crashes near the house of Sam and Barb, a couple all set to leave for a trip. Their house is inhabited by their kids, Pete and Charles, who are being visited by Aunt Millie and Uncle Herb. The worms infiltrate their basement and kill Sam and Barb, but everyone assumes that they just left for their trip. Charles discovers the slug-like spawns of the massive worm and realizes that they respond to sound. Meanwhile, Pete studies the corpse of one of the larvae with his study buddies Ellen, Kathy, and Frankie. The humongous worm attacks and kills Uncle Herb and Ellen. Charles, with his clever and timely thinking, distracts the worm and blows it up. When Pete finds out that his parents never left, he's left completely traumatized. Word soon travels around town about the alien worms, and a town-wide hunt eradicates all the larvae. Unfortunately, as night begins to set in, another worm emerges from beneath a hill. If you can ignore a few continuity errors, this movie will surely climb into your personal favorite list. Alligator. A young teenager who loves animals gets a baby alligator and names it Ramon, but her cruel father flushes it down the toilet. Ramon is dumped into the sewer system where he survives on other animals discarded like him. His main source of food is the lab funded by local tycoon Slade, which worked on growth formula. The lab discarded the carcasses of the experimented animals, but unfortunately, the project was abandoned after the animals affected by the growth formula displayed an insatiable appetite. In 12 years, the alligator consumes this growth formula regularly and grows into a massive 36-foot monster. Now that the project was abandoned, the alligator began to hunt sewage workers. Detective David Madison is assigned the case, and he seeks the help of herpetologist Marissa Kendall. Turns out, Marissa was that very same young girl who had first bought and named Ramon. David's investigations are all constantly undermined as Slade uses his influence to get him suspended. Slade doesn't want the news of his failed experiment to get out, as it would affect his business a lot. Unfortunately for him, a reporter, Thomas Kemp, releases photographic evidence of the alligator. In a twist honoring poetic justice, Ramon then attacks Slade's mansion, killing him, the mayor who was on his payroll, and the head scientist. David and Marissa find out about the attack and lure it back to the sewers where they had explosives set up. They set them off and blow up the alligator, but unfortunately, as they walk away, another abandoned alligator makes its way into the sewer system. Alligator is one of the few films that holds up pretty well against the test of time. It's written by John Sayles, who's a household name for horror and thrillers. If you don't recognize him, he's the genius behind Piranha. It borrows considerably from the iconic Jaws, but delivers an entertaining time nonetheless. You'd be doing yourself a disservice if you missed it. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. The 1978 movie by John DeBello and Costa Dillon, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, is a hilarious comedy horror movie where tomatoes become sentient and begin a killing spree. After a slew of unusual murders, the president, Mason Dixon, assembles a special team of scuba diver Greg Colburn, disguise expert Sam Smith, parachuter and soldier Wilbur Finletter, and swimmer Greta Adenbaum. Sam infiltrates the tomatoes, but his cover is blown when he asks for ketchup. An assassin attacks Dixon, and it turns out to be his press secretary, Richardson. Richardson has figured out a way to control the tomatoes and plans to use them to rule over everyone. He's about to reveal his secret when Finletter attacks him to save Dixon. Dixon then figures out that the tomatoes are affected by the song Puberty Love. All the residents get together in a stadium and play that song. The tomatoes begin to shrink as the citizens stomp them to death. As everyone assumes peace is about to be reestablished, a carrot rises up. This movie is a hilarious spoof and parodies a lot of popular movies. A true cult classic, you cannot call yourself a true cinephile if you haven't watched Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Eight-Legged Freaks. Eight-Legged Freaks, written by Jesse Alexander and Ellery Elkayem and directed by Elkayem, was released as a Rack Attack in some countries. This 2002 film stars David Arquette and Scarlett Johansson. The plot begins with Joshua Taft, an exotic spider farmer in Prosperity, Arizona, who collects crickets feeding from the local pond. Unknown to him, the local pond had been polluted by a barrel of toxic waste. The spiders grow huge and devour Joshua. Weeks later, Chris McCormick returns to town to oppose the mayor's plan to sell the local mine. Chris believes that the mine still has gold in it. Chris also gets romantically involved with the sheriff, Sam Parker. Sam's son, Mike, discovers a spider leg in the mines and warns Chris of the giant spiders, but he's ignored. As the mines run all over town, the spiders begin abducting pets and even residents. Chris teams up with some of the residents and broadcasts messages requesting help from conspiracy theorist Harlan Griffiths. As the spiders attack the townspeople head over to the mines. Chris meets the gigantic spider, Brazilian orb weaver Consuela, and battles her. He uses methane to blow her up, and the police arrive to help. After this incident, Harlan is brought back to his daily conspiracy theories and reports that the town has decided to cover up the spider attack. Arachnophobes beware, this movie will scare the bejesus out of you, but if you're okay with creepy crawlies, you can expect some feel-good comedy in this fun film. Cursed. Jenny Tate and Becky Morton get their fortunes told by Zella, who warns them about a terrible fate at the hands of a beast. They don't believe her. That same night, Ellie Myers picks up her brother Jimmy and collides with Becky in a car accident. A creature attacks the three of them, killing Becky and injuring the Myers siblings. Official reports state that they were attacked by a bear or cougar. The next day, Ellie seems to be attracted to human blood, but she ignores it. At a party, she gets annoyed that Jenny is flirting with her boyfriend Jake, so she leaves early. That same night, Jenny is killed by a wolf. Jake is convinced that Ellie is a werewolf and she killed Jenny. Meanwhile, Jimmy becomes stronger and more aggressive and defends himself against a bully called Bo. Bo confesses he's in love with Jimmy, and even though he rejects him, Bo decides to help him. Ellie and Jimmy touch Silver, and when it burns them, they're convinced that they're turning into werewolves. Ellie decides that Jake is a werewolf too, and Jake lets her know that he was born a werewolf and can control the transformation. They ask for help from Zella, and she tells Ellie that the only way to cure herself is to kill the line of the werewolf who converted her. The werewolf attacks them once again, and it turns out to be Joni, who was converted by Jake in a one-night stand. Joni wants to eliminate all threats to have Jake for herself. She knocks out Jake and attacks Ellie and Jimmy. The cops arrive and kill Joni. Jake reveals that the only way to break the curse is to kill him, as he was the one who converted Joni. He attacks Jimmy as he wants to be the only alpha male, and the siblings launch a joint attack. As they kill Jake, the curse is broken, and they are both back to being humans again. This 2005 movie stars Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg. It's the product of a collaboration between Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, the same pair that brought out the Scream film series. You can't miss this excellent camera work, and we suggest not going into the movie expecting it to be scary. Like all werewolf movies, it focuses more on suspense and thriller aspects than horror. Troll 2. The Waits family is set to travel to Nilbog for a house exchange vacation. Right before they leave, Joshua is warned by the ghost of his grandfather that vegetarian goblins will be waiting for them in Nilbog and will turn them into plants to devour them. Joshua warns his family, but they continue on to Nilbog and are joined by Joshua's sister, Holly's boyfriend Elliot, and his friends Arnold, Drew, and Brent. In Nilbog, Arnold witnesses the goblins chase a girl and turn her into a vegetable and eat her. He too is transformed into a tree. The Goblin Queen, a witch named Credence, uses the Stonehenge magic stone to turn the people into plants. All of Elliot's friends meet gruesome fates at the hands of the goblins. Joshua eavesdrops at a goblin church meeting and he's caught. The goblins drag him in and try to force-feed him poison ice cream. His father Michael, however, walks in and rescues him. The villagers hold a surprise party as an apology for the church incident. During the party, Credence attacks Joshua, but Seth appears and saves him. The goblin priest attacks them next and, with a spell, banishes his soul to hell, but Seth kills him in the nick of time, revealing his goblin form. The villagers all turn on the Waits and they hide in their house. They conduct a seance and contact Seth, who gives them a secret weapon. The goblins kidnap Joshua and he opens up the secret weapon, which is a double-decker bologna sandwich. His body becomes poisonous to the goblins, and when he touches the Stonehenge magic stone, all the goblins are destroyed. As they return home, Joshua's mom unknowingly eats the poisoned food prepared by the goblin family that had stayed over at their house. Joshua walks in on goblins eating his mother and screams. There are certain movies that are so hilariously bad that they become spectacular viewing experiences. This is one such movie. Trust us on this one, you'll keep returning to experience Troll 2 over and over again. Slother House. Slother House is the most recent movie on this list as it was released in 2023. Emily wants to be the most popular senior in her college, so she gets a smart sloth. Little does she know, the sloth is an expert and psychotic murderer. One by one, the girls of Emily's sorority slowly fall victim to the sloth. Written by Katie Lanigan and Bradley Fowler, Slother House is directed by Matthew Goodbye. Boar. We're traveling to the land down under for our next movie. The 2017 film Boar follows a man-eating boar as it goes on a vicious rampage. Ken and his friend Blue witness the boar savagely finish off some campers. Ken and Blue decide to kill the boar, but before they can find ammunition, Blue is killed. Ken's friend Bernie and his son Sasha begin to look for Ken. Bernie is in a van with his extended family who's visiting him. His nephew Bart niece Ella, their parents Bruce and Debbie, and Ella's boyfriend Robert. The boar attacks their van and kills Bruce. In a vicious fight, the boar kills Robert and Sasha unites with Debbie to kill the boar. As they drive away, another boar makes an appearance, letting out a blood-curdling scream. The Boar, directed by Chris Sun, is a fun, fast-paced thriller, especially if you're a fan of gore. Its practical effects are praiseworthy, and you'll love it if you like the 1984 movie Razorback. Zem Beavers! A toxic chemical canister rolls away from its transport truck and rolls downstream where it splashes several beavers. Later, Mary, Jen, and Zoe arrive at a nearby cabin for a girls' getaway. That night, their boyfriends, Buck, Sam, and Tommy, arrive, much to Mary's annoyance. A beaver attacks Jen while she's showering, but Tommy kills it with a bat. They leave the corpse in a bag out on the porch, but the next morning, the corpse is mysteriously missing. Jen stays back while the others go swimming. In the lake, a beaver chews off Buck's foot and scratches Tommy. Together, they rush back to the house. Jen is attacked and scratched by the same beaver that attacked her the previous day. Together, they discover that the phone lines have been severed by the beavers. Tommy, Buck, and Zoe leave to get help, but their drive is interrupted by a tree the beavers have cut down. As they set out on foot, another tree falls on Tommy and kills him. A local hunter, Smith, rescues Zoe and Buck and drives them back. They see that Jen, due to being scratched by the beaver, has turned into a beaver zombie. She attacks and kills Sam by biting him. Buck and Sam both turn into zombie-like creatures. Zoe escapes by jumping out the window but gets a lot of bloody injuries. Mary is the next to turn, and Zoe kills her with an axe, becoming the sole survivor. As she tries to get help, a group of truckers run her over. If you're a fan of horror but also like to laugh till your guts hurt, you're cheating yourself by not watching Zem Beavers. It's another movie that reminds you that nothing is worth taking seriously. Marvelous verdict! So folks, here's a list of creature horrors that should last you at least a month, or if you're a voracious cinephile, maybe a good week. Anyways, which one of these hilarious yet horrific creatures is your favorite? Do you like the cute mogwais or the serpentine monsters of Tremors? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below, and if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day!